So we're looking at now is just we'll call it HTML1. It's just the very basic HTML, how the files are formed and those kinds of things, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and we're all starting from the same starting point. Probably one of the first things you want to do is turn on the ability to see the file extension. So to do that, we're going to go into Explorer. Just click into any random folder here. Click on Organize, Folder and Search Options. Click on the View tab. And down here, probably checked is Hide File Extensions for Known File Types. We want to turn that off. And as soon as we apply it, we can now see we can see the file extensions. So that just helps us know what the file is we're working for. Rename files, make sure files don't have funny extensions or anything like that. Okay, so we got that done. For our programming, for the HTML programming, we're going to use Notepad. It's easier to use. I want to make sure you understand how all the tags are formed and all the back end behind it. So instead of a GUI, we're gonna pound it out with Notepad. We're actually going to use a program called Notepad++, and Notepad++ is free. It's at notepad-plus-plus.org. And when you get there, it's got this little gecko on a pencil, so you know you're in the right place. This is free software. It is there's no malware or anything in it. It's all legit. You can be comfortable downloading this and installing it. So once we have Notepad++, we can open it up, and it's just got a few more features, a little easier to work with than Microsoft Notepad. So I would definitely recommend this. The very first thing that we want to do for our HTML file is going to be name the file. Go ahead and save it and name it. So after we've got a new document open here in Notepad, we can go to File, Save As. Save as type, we're going to change that to be hypertext markup language file. And we're going to call it index. So index.html. I saved mine on the desktop. We saved it. Let's look and see. There it is. Now this is static HTML, so we do not need a web browser, or I'm sorry, a web server in order to view this. We can save it on our desktop, open it on our desktop. What we see here is what the user will see. Now later on, when we start to add some functionality and some behind the scenes kind of stuff to our web pages, we'll actually need the server. But for this static stuff, we can do it just fine off our desktop. So we've opened our index.html file. This is going to be just a simple text file. There's no funny commands or there's no binary or anything like that in there. This is just, it's all text. We're going to be using HTML tags, those kinds of things. The very first thing that we want to do is declare the Doctype right here. And the Doctype just tells the browser what kind of language is going to be in this document. And this way the browser can, in this instance, pull up its rules for XHTML 1.1. The browser will use XHTML 1.1 rules. This is written in XHTML 1.1, so therefore it should appear exactly as we intend it to. Now there will be some differences between browsers, and we'll discuss that later, but for the most part what we see is what we'll get if we're using these rules. Doctype is not required, but if it's not specified, the browser has to guess what rules are being used. So it's a good idea to have it. So declaring the Doctype is the very first thing that we want to do in the document, that we want to have on the top of the document. After that, we're going to start adding our tags to it. We have some required tags. The first required tag is the HTML tag. And notice to do a tag, we just have less than, and then the word HTML, and then greater than. When we open a tag, we have to close a tag. So we opened it, we close it. This is the HTML element. Now the HTML element is the root element of the document. It's going to contain everything else, all of the other elements, except Doctype. Doctype is first. Our elements, we need one extra thing here on HTML, and that is going to be our, we need an attribute declaring X HTML. Okay, so this is our tag HTML. This is our attribute, all of this other stuff here to the side. So it's just more detail about the tag. Now this Doctype and this attribute, this is standard for our XHTML 1.1 that we're going to use. So on Icon, there's a sample HTML page to get you started so that you've got all this language and everything. You don't have to look it up, retype it, any of that kind of stuff. Our next required element is the head element. So we open head, we close head. And in head, it's just processing information and metadata. Any text that we type within that head element will not be rendered by the browser. It'll be used by the browser, it'll be used by search engines and stuff like that, but it will not be rendered. You won't see it on the browser screen. One other required element that we have is title. And title is within the head element. So the title will be displayed on the top left in the browser title bar. Or on the tab if you're using a browser with tabs. It's also used as the bookmark information. So if somebody bookmarks your site, this is what they see. And it's also referenced by search engines some. It's part of that algorithm. So we probably want the title page to be fairly descriptive. Welcome to my page, not that descriptive. So let's change this to Mike Colbert. Pretty descriptive. Notice that we have a tag nested, or an element nested within another element. So we have the title element nested within the head element. We open these in one particular order. We close them in the reverse order. So first head, then title. So when we close, we first close title, then close head. If we had a third level of nesting here, then we would open it last and close it first on our way out. So that's head and title, required elements. Our last required element is the body element. We open body and we close body. Now, whatever falls within this body element is going to be the markup that's displayed in the browser. So it's going to be the stuff that actually appears on the screen. We have two types of elements that can appear within the body. We have inline elements or block elements, and we'll get into those a little bit more later as we're moving along. But this is basically where the language goes for the that the browser is going to display. So let's do our standard hello world. Let's save all of this. And now when we come down here and open this in a web browser, we should see our title up here, and we should see the body that we've put in there. Now, there's one other little caveat when using XHTML. XHTML requires a container or a block element to contain all of the other block elements. So to be XHTML 1.1 compliant, right after body, we need to open a div. And when we open a div, we have to close a div. So this is a bit of redundancy. The body contains everything that's displayed by the browser, but the XHTML 1.1 standard says you also have to have a block element container, and the easiest way to do that is just right after body to open a div and right before body ends to close a div. Divs are just divisions or logical divisions on the page. They're containers to hold other things. So we've got our one big container here. And if we save this, when we open it, we can see there's no change at all. But when we go to do validation and those kinds of things with our page, if we don't have that block element containing everything, then it will not validate. There'll be some really weird errors. So that's the very, very basic HTML about the page, how to get it open. Remember our required tags. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them here. We have the HTML is required, a required element. Head is a required element. Title is a required element. Body is a required element. And if we have those 4 things, the web page should display on the browser, in the browser. Other things like this Doctype and declaring what rules we're using, those are important, and they're needed for any kind of production type HTML you're doing. If you're just trying to hack something together really quickly, these 4 elements will be fine. So that's pretty much what we have for HTML1. In the next lesson, we'll look at some of the individual tags and how they're formed and those kinds of things.